Power problems add to the strain on Taiwan's aging buildings. Taiwan plans to launch satellites to stay connected in a crisis. A Taipei art fair highlights the beauty of the East Coast and its dangers. Plus,
we're here in Kyoto, Japan at this festival celebrating Taiwan's culture, from food to music and religion. Stay tuned for more.
A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Betty Chen. Power shortages are complicating work to rebuild Taipei's aging housing. A strong interest reports it's just the latest problem with Taiwan's strained and fragile grid.
In Taipei, last month's magnitude 7.2 earthquake has put fresh attention on an old issue, the need to replace aging buildings. Over 70% of the city's housing is more than 30 years old, meaning it predates today's strict building codes. But the state of the power grid could dampen demand for new builds. A planned substation has been delayed for years, putting pressure on the power supply in parts of the city. Yet demand for power keeps growing in these same areas. The state-run power company wants to make sure existing customers don't lose out as new housing goes up. So new builds will need to install a remote switch that will shut off the supply when needed, provided they use more than 100 kilowatt hours. Almost all new builds will be affected, as the average household uses up to 3 times that amount. Each switch costs over $6,000, adding to the cost of buying. The power company says this is a necessary move. But this means buyers will have to pay steep Taipei prices for a home that might not even have reliable power. The substation that will relieve the pressure isn't expected until the end of 2025. On the street, views about the policy are mixed.
The
real estate industry, though, says the program won't impact demand for high-end builds too much.
This
is just the latest facet of a long-standing energy crunch in Taiwan. The country is a tech and manufacturing center with high demand, but it relies on imported fossil fuels and is working to phase out nuclear power. The grid's also suffered a series of malfunctions in recent years, leading to blackouts in urban centers like Taipei. These power problems will be among the biggest tests the incoming Lai Ching-te administration will face. Scott Huang and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Quake-hit Hualien City is helping traditional market vendors stay afloat by cutting rent fees by up to half.
为期会到半年，那以复兴来讲的话是2个月，5成降5成，那可能之后其他的市场都会以减租3成的部分，一直到年底。
The city's markets have seen a sharp drop in customers since April's magnitude 7.2 quake, with several vendors packing up. 2 markets were heavily damaged and will be closed for 4 months for repairs. The city will set up temporary markets with lower fees for those vendors. As President Tsai Ing-wen prepares to leave office, we take a look at one of her major policy pledges, justice for victims of Taiwan's past authoritarian government. Jeremy Olivier reports on some of the progress she's made and what survivors say still needs to be done.
92-year-old Tai Kwan-yu is one of the few remaining survivors of Taiwan's White Terror, a decades-long period of political repression and suppression by an authoritarian Kuomintang, or Chinese nationalist regime. Tsai told TaiwanPlus he was arrested twice for political offenses, suffering torture and other human rights abuses at the hands of his captors. When he was set to be released, the authorities added another 3 years to his sentence. Collectively, Tsai spent 13 years behind bars.
这路哦，无什么个人的感想，是安那无个人的感想。在威权统治之下，人民的权利并无受保障，连生命财产都无受保障的情形之下，人民哪有什么 感想。
When Taiwan moved toward democracy in the 1990s, Tsai banded together with fellow White Terror survivors to call for transitional justice. They demanded recognition of what they had been through and accountability for the wrongs committed by the previous government. Taiwan was long denied this process because the Kuomintang, or KMT, continued to hold the presidency or legislature for 30 years after martial law was lifted in 1987. But in 2016, a new president was inaugurated who promised to carry out transitional justice. 2 terms and 8 years since, Tsai Ing-wen and her Democratic Progressive Party-led government have made several steps toward that goal. The most substantial, setting up the Transitional Justice Commission, a temporary cabinet-level body tasked with investigating White Terror-era incidents. Tsai's government also unsealed classified archives, removed symbols of Taiwan's authoritarian past, and gave former political prisoners a clean slate.
受害者的罪名大概有5900多件被撤销了，那所以他们得到完整的这个清白之身哦，然后司法上面的记录被涂销，并且在这个前提之下，他们的这个受损的权利，包括说过去被没收的土地哦，不动产这个部分也是过去法律没有处理的，在这一次都把它处理完。
Despite its progress on this issue, Tsai Ing-wen's government has also received sharp criticism, especially for its decision to also go after the KMT's assets, many of which were taken illegitimately when the party arrived in Taiwan from China in the 1940s. It was seen as an unfair partisan attack. Tsai's government was also faulted for not adequately educating the public on the need for transitional justice.
On the one hand, it has institutionalized the efforts to pursue transitional justice. But on the other hand, it failed to make the public as a more deliberative forum to talk about this kind of issues in Taiwanese society.
For those like Tai Kuan-yu, who suffered so much under martial law, the sting of those memories are now less painful in the comfort of their homes. But just outside, reminders of that period are still everywhere. Like the tens of thousands of statues of Taiwan's former president, Chiang Kai-shek, who many view as a brutal dictator. There's a huge memorial to him in Taipei, one of the city's most well-known landmarks, a sign of the challenges the DPP government has faced in ridding Taiwan of these markers.
那清楚威权象征阻力还是蛮大，这个阻力当然是国民党。那最大的一个问题。
Survivors of the White Terror say that the most important part of transitional justice is making sure those in power do not repeat the mistakes of the past and bringing peace to society. Their hope that the outgoing president's efforts over the last 8 years will not have been in vain, and that the fight for truth and justice in Taiwan continues even after Tsai Ing-wen leaves office. Patrick Chen, Yu-Chen Lai, and Jeremy Olivier for TaiwanPlus.
Stay tuned all this week as we look back on President Tsai Ing-wen's 8 years in office. Urban decay and natural disasters are inspiring artists across Taiwan. Reese Ayers visited Taipei's annual Dangdai Art Fair to catch some of the works influenced by Taiwan's breathtaking but dangerous East Coast landscapes.
A menagerie of uncanny concrete animals, unearthed from their mountain graves and brought to a scenic beach here in Taiwan, giving a second life to strange relics of urban decay.
旧的东西或者是废弃的东西，它比较像是一种时间的状态。然后我自己是对这样的物质或是这样的物件本身很感兴趣。然后我也希望说，可以透过艺术的方式去创造另外一种新的形式。
Taiwanese artist Chen Hung's Concrete Animals is one of several pieces featured in a special exhibit co-hosted by Taiwan's Culture Ministry at this year's Taipei Dangdai Art Fair. The works in this exhibit take inspiration from human and environmental catastrophe, depicting the results of the collapse of the built and natural world around us. Titled Before Thunder, the theme of the exhibit is particularly pertinent in the wake of the huge earthquake that struck Hualien in April. Cho, a Hualien native, takes inspiration from the beauty and destructive forces of nature.
这些雕塑其实是来自于刚刚上一件水泥动物园的这些水泥动物雕塑身上的一些裂缝跟一些洞。这些裂缝跟洞，它其实是自然的元素形成，它可能是因为地震，或者是因为外面的风吹、日晒雨淋产生的自然的裂痕。因为我本身是花莲，所以我还蛮习惯地震这件事情，包含说我的工作室在制作作品的时候，完成之后作品的要如何加固、固定它。
Meanwhile, artist Pan Xianhua, who also has a deep affinity with Taiwan's rugged east coast, displays a very different kind of art.
譬如说像这张，它是一个地震后它不是有边坡滑动，所以它是一个那个边坡的工程。所以我每一年我其实都还是会保留一个习惯，就骑机车骑到花莲、台东，但是基本上我现在都会每一年都会固定骑这些，然后到处去拍照，然后再把拍到的元素转化成画面。
But Pan says over the years painting Taiwan's landscapes, he's noticed the environment changing, and not just due to natural disasters.
有很多过去很不错的东西，它在消失。譬如说你先前画过的东西，再回去看没有了，这是一个人文的景观。
Despite urbanization, Pan says work is being done to protect Taiwan's remaining natural environment.
其实我觉得政府跟民间都有在做一个努力，所以它跟过去有一段时间比，它是复苏的，它是有在复苏的。
Inspired by the destructive forces of the environment and human activity, many exhibits at this year's Dangdai Art Fair serve as a reminder of the delicate and temporary nature of the world around us. John Su and Rhys Ayres for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan Space Agency is planning to launch 6 low Earth orbit satellites from 2026. The move is part of efforts to strengthen the country's emergency communication system in case of crises. The agency says it will also bolster the country's space industry. Taiwan currently relies on 15 subsea cables for connectivity, which are vulnerable to being damaged or cut. The program aims to gain uninterrupted coverage, which would require at least 120 satellites. To learn more about Taiwan's communication satellite program, reporter Chris Gorin spoke to analyst Zhixiang Xu from the Institute for National Defense and Security Research.
The Taiwan Space Agency, or TASA, has just announced that they plan to launch 6 new communication satellites starting in 2026. What are Taiwan's current satellite capabilities like, and why is TASA focused on these communication satellites right now?
The Taiwanese Space Agency, the TASA, is actually a 30-year-old organization, but the Taiwanese government is focusing on space development just, since recent years. The government put much more budget than before, so we don't really have a lot of satellites, but more than 1,000 we have. And they are mainly so-called weather satellites or Earth observation satellites. Communication is actually one of the most critical elements in the modern society. In particular, all our technological life in the future will highly rely on internet. If you look at the battlefield in Ukraine, you will find that the SpaceX and its Starlink system play a crucial role to support the Ukrainian government and society and military survive from the war and maintain the basic function of the whole society, like financial, hospital system, and so on.
TASA's plan is to build its own domestically made satellite communication system similar to SpaceX's Starlink. But SpaceX already has the industry-leading system. Why not just use theirs?
In our telecommunication law, the Taiwanese government asked a foreign company to create a joint venture in Taiwan, and the Taiwanese government or Taiwanese stakeholders should have more than 50%. For the Taiwanese government, that is quite important to make sure even in the most critical time, the system could still work. But, the SpaceX want to hold the whole 100%. So in that sense, I think there are still no consensus between Taiwanese government and SpaceX. That is also the reason that the Taiwanese program of communication resilience choose OneWeb instead of SpaceX.
Speaking of OneWeb, the satellite company from the UK, their systems were recently used during rescue operations after the earthquakes in eastern Taiwan. How useful are these systems during natural disasters?
Well, I think that is quite critical, just like in Ukraine, because in wartime or in natural disasters, many infrastructure might be damaged or be destroyed. In this emergency time, to maintain the communication is the most critical things. So in that sense, this kind of a new space communication system like OneWeb or Starlink will be very important for the rescue and also for the rescue mission and also to keep the whole society works.
The head of TASA announced 6 new communication satellites, but how many would it take to make this a reliable system that would work even if China or anyone else tried to interfere with it?
Well, actually, if you look at the Director General Wu Zongxin, what he said before, actually we need at least 50 or 60 satellites. But now we know that they claim for maybe 100 or 120. That means for the resilience, we need more than 50, 60. Because we need redundancy to make sure the whole system will work even with some jamming or even with some, anti-satellite technologies and so on.
That was defense analyst Zhixiang Xu speaking with our reporter Chris Gorin. Coming up after the break, would you let AI teach your children? A school in Hong Kong is giving it a go. Stay tuned.
For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, download the TaiwanPlus app.
In the face of adversity, the power of truth.
A roadmap for a just and open world, charted by the freest country in Asia.
Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
TaiwanPlus News, a voice of freedom in Asia.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. At least 43 people have been killed and 15 are missing following flash floods and mudslides of volcanic debris in Indonesia. Harel Hughes reports.
A search for survivors continues on the Indonesian island of Sumatra after flash floods sent volcanic ash and mud down the slopes of the Mount Merapi volcano, killing dozens, destroying homes, and coating nearby villages in mud.
Kalau kejadiannya tiba-tiba, tapi yang paling jelas tuh ketika terjadi penyumbatan di jembatan, lalu air tuh pokoknya bertebaran kemana-mana lah. Bisa nggak ada terkontrol lagi.
For those who lost their homes, a local school has become a shelter. And in the hospital, a nurse keeps track of the deceased. A list local authorities hope will not grow longer as a search for survivors continues.
Ada sekitar lebih kurang 4 buah rumah aja, cuma belum kita pastikan beberapa sebenarnya. Cuman kalau dari informasi yang ada di warga sekarang, masih 4 rumah. Dikabarkan bilang ada beberapa yang sudah ditemukan.
Rescue workers hope heavy machinery can clear the roads to bring much-needed aid to the people and begin the process of recovery. Joseph Wu and Harel Hughes for TaiwanPlus.
People in northern Afghanistan are burying their dead after flash floods killed at least 315. The flooding damaged thousands of homes and wiped out livestock. 1,600 people were injured. 8 groups are warning of damage to the region's water supply and healthcare facilities. Efforts to deliver aid are being hampered by muddy and damaged roads. As artificial intelligence develops at breakneck pace, one of the big concerns is how it will affect the job market. One report predicts the technology could replace hundreds of millions of workers by 2030. But what about AI in the education system? Are AI teachers the future? In Hong Kong, they are testing it out. Jaime Okan has the story.
These students in Hong Kong are getting ready for a lecture by their AI professor. These experimental courses at the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology are trialing the best ways to incorporate artificial intelligence in the education system.
Education have to be always pushing forward with the new technology, new innovation, and the wave is coming, right? The AI wave is coming, and there's actually the AI teachers can bring in diversity, bring in interesting aspect, and even immersive storytelling in the classroom, and I think it's good. Way to improve our education.
The AI instructors are created using a program that reads the original presentation slides. The voice, gestures, and how the avatar looks can be customized based on the class and student preferences. It's then projected onto a screen or a headset.
With this AI, you can create whatever looking, appearance, different colors, diversity of personas that as you want. So basically, you can be a black teacher, white or Caucasian, Asian, all young. Those are just depend on your choice.
The trial has so far shown that using an AI professor gives the human professor more time to work on other projects while boosting the curriculum and course content. Some students also say the avatar plays a big role in the quality of the education. Students from this course are learning game theory from a digital Einstein, and they say the personalization of the avatar improves the learning experience.
就算唔係話緊個 professor 教得好定唔好，唔係講緊話個 teaching quality， 就係講緊其他外在嘅因素對於佢哋嘅 learning experience 都係有影響嘅。咁呢個係即係我覺得有呢一個 personalize 嘅選擇係好，即係點講咧？佢係一個輔助嘅作用咯。咁未嘗不可咯。
如果说我在感官上替换了一种你的心理接受程度更高，或者说能够直接给你带来亲切感的这种形象，那首先呢，你会消除跟这个 professor 之间的距离感。
This trial is only being run in a handful of classes, but some are uncertain if it should replace traditional teaching.
其实我觉得，对于一个虚拟人物来讲，他借助 AI 的能力，他给我们带来更多就是范围更广的知识。但是我觉得在一定层次、一定程度上来讲，这种深度的专业知识，可能它是替代不了一个非常专业的 professor 的。
While there are no plans to permanently hire these AI professors, and many students still prefer human lecturers, with this technology rapidly advancing, artificial intelligence is already teaching lessons on what to expect in the future. Chen and Jaime Okan for TaiwanPlus.
A two-day festival in Japan celebrating Taiwanese culture has brought together unique cross-cultural collaborations in food and music. Tiffany Wong reports from Kyoto.
We Are the World, a song calling for global peace, performed by this Japanese high school band at a festival highlighting Taiwan culture in Kyoto. The band is a household favorite in Taiwan, having won the hearts of Taiwanese at the country's National Day Parade in 2022. At the same time, Taiwanese people won their hearts too.
台湾の皆さんから本当に温かい拍手をもらって、その拍手で逆に生徒たちが感動してしまって、もうすごく涙が出たということがありまして、本当に言葉を超えた気持ちのやり取りっていうところがそこにあって。
Breaking barriers is exactly what this festival aims to do, bringing Taiwan and Japan closer through music, food, and cross-cultural collaboration. The annual festival, which is being held here in Kyoto for the first time, is going for a night market theme with dimmed lights and rows of crowded stalls filled with vendors and also visitors. Now, some of the things you find here won't be seen at a typical Taiwanese night market, like this Japanese daifuku mochi, which is typically made with strawberries and red bean paste. This iteration is made with Taiwanese pineapples and white bean paste. Vendors here hope that their innovative food creations can bring the two countries and their cultures closer together.
2日間限定ですけれど、ちょっと台湾と日本がより仲良くなって、味で何か交流が図れたらなと思って作ってまいりました。
On both days of the festival, this Taiwanese sandwich shop had the longest lines. It just opened a branch in Tokyo last year and has gained popularity by appealing to local tastes.
那到日本的特色其实是会使用在地的食材，例如说我们会用这个爱媛的米干，或者是会用七把的花生 去做日本的 Genday 的口味。但是其实销售的最好的还是我们在台湾经典的这个招牌火腿。
For some people living in Japan, this event is giving them a taste of what Taiwan is like.
台湾にはずっと行きたかったから、それでもう絶対と思って来ました。
For some Taiwanese living in Japan, it also brings back a taste of home, but they say it leaves more to the imagination.
I still feel like Japan, I still feel like Japan is because when you walk on the street of Taiwan, especially in night markets, like you can see like people shouting and it's like a little bit chaos, but like coming to here is like a high quality version of everything.
By displaying the best of what makes Taiwan special, the event is symbolic of the close relationship between Taiwan and Japan, while strengthening the people-to-people connections. Kama Xu and Tiffany Wong in Kyoto, Japan for TaiwanPlus.
People around the world were treated to the sight of auroras this weekend, triggered by the largest solar storm in 2 decades. The northern lights could be seen as far south as the U.S. state of Texas and northern China. Auroras occur when solar winds disturb the Earth's magnetic field and are only usually visible closer to the Earth's poles. Scientists say solar storms could disrupt power grids and new tools are needed to prepare for them.
The power companies need to have ways to mitigate that impact. And luckily, the Space Weather Prediction Center has been working closely with the industry and regulators to help them understand what space weather is and to prepare for it.
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. Finally, we take you to Seoul for the Lotus Lantern Festival ahead of Buddha's birthday. I'm Betty Chen. Take care and see you next time.